I'm Cindy Hall, Regional Director with Senator McCaskill's office.
I'm Chris Hahn, staff assistant in the office.
Okay, and we've been meeting with Chris and Cindy and other folks from their office on a regular daily basis, and they asked, since we were coming every day and such, bringing information and articles, they asked if we could have a more extended meeting where we could get all these concerns out. And I think that I want to state some of those concerns right now to you all. I know you've heard some of this before. We are interested in hearing your responses. But to begin with, it seems like what we'd like to know is if Senator McCaskill is going to take a stand opposing cutting our budget at a time when we can't afford to cut the budget and when we can't afford to have our economy tank based on the fact that we are putting people out of work by cutting spending on things that employ people. And it's our sense that this is a very misguided and misheaded effort that should instead be directed at righting the economy and putting our country back to work. That's really essential to all of us, and we'd like to hear from you as to what the senators' thoughts are on the idea of cutting our budget at a time when so many people are out of work and the economy is in such bad shape.
Can everybody hear me without the microphone?
No, not really. Go ahead, give it mic.
You know, we are more than happy to take notes on everything that you're here to say. You know, Claire has voted 4 times on the jobs bills. She took the difficult vote on the stimulus, which was the largest stimulus ever. These were all things to create jobs. The jobs bills that she's voted for are all paid for by taxing the millionaires. So I think she's hearing your message loud and clear and acting on it.
Well, we would love to hear what she has to say about the so-called super committee process and the notion that they are trying to cut the deficits projected out over the next decade by trillions of dollars, primarily by cutting spending, and that they're including in that mix, putting on the table and making cuts to our social insurance programs that people depend on, our Social Security, our Medicare, our Medicaid. These are all critical to the working people, to the people of modest means, to middle-class citizens. You know, there are people in that top 1% or 5% who really don't depend on these programs at all, who have the wealth that they might collect Social Security, but they'd be fine without it. They might get Medicare benefits, but they could pay their health care bills because they have so much money they don't know what to do with it. But those are the exceptions. Those are a handful of people. The vast majority of the American people can't really afford this. And to continue tax breaks for the wealthy and to continue not to tax people who can afford it seems to us to be really misdirected.
Trickle-down does not work. Tax breaks for the wealthy do not create jobs.
I want to give some of my colleagues a chance to raise some concerns. Would 2 of you like to each speak a little bit to some of the concerns we have?
Well, one of our main concerns is why they are threatening to cut social services that we need so desperately. Why not instead focus on cutting defense spending? You know, because we could definitely be making cuts in that area while still maintaining a strong army that will protect us. So we'd like to know what McCaskill's position is on that, you know, about encouraging cuts in defense spending, in tax loopholes for wealthy individuals and corporations, and also in kickbacks for dirty fuels like oil.
Corruption.
Can everyone hear me if I talk loudly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Back here, though, it's a little harder.
Well, why don't you come up?
Why are you resistant to using it?
It's
Because
okay.
it's a small enough group, I don't really think.
We have a lot of background noise. This reason I asked you to be on the mic.
Claire, just this week, voted to cut an additional $29 billion from defense spending. Claire, just this week, voted to cut an additional $29 billion from defense spending. She has always felt there's room to cut defense spending. She's one of the first senators. I was in the car with her when she called and said, we have got to talk about cutting the Pentagon. The Pentagon cannot be the sacred cow, okay? She's at the lead on that.
What about Homeland Security? It needs to be cut too.
Yeah. As far as Social Security, she does not believe, I'm answering the initial question. On Social Security, she doesn't believe that we should be cutting people that are currently on Social Security. Where she's looking, she thinks that and this is probably where we will disagree, and we will have to agree to disagree. She thinks there are room in the program for changes to be made in the future for people that are not on Social Security yet. But most of the changes that she's advocating are exactly what you're talking about. People that are too wealthy to be on Social Security, having to pay higher premiums, having to pay for their prescription drugs, having to pay higher co-pays. That's the kind of changes she's talking about, which seems to be right in line with what you're advocating for.
And she was a principal co-sponsor of the bill on the tax breaks against welfare.
We're happy to hear that. As far as dirty energy goes, President Obama's effort to eliminate some of the tax loopholes and breaks for the big oil companies is a good step, but it doesn't start to address the subsidies to dirty energy, including coal, oil, natural gas, and nuclear. And Senator McCaskill, unfortunately, is a backer of all of those energy technologies, and those are not our energy future. Our energy future is to be based on a sustainable mix of getting energy efficient and adapting rapidly affordable renewable energy sources. And we want to see a cut to all subsidies to dirty energy. And that's something that's very important and something, unfortunately, the senator has not yet come around to. And unfortunately, she still backs, as last I heard, so-called clean coal, which is an oxymoron, and so-called safe nuclear, which is also an oxymoron, and wants to give them significant subsidies, which is a problem. But when we talked about Social Security a moment ago, one of the questions we've asked you consistently, and we have not yet heard where the senator stands, is about COLA, the cost of living adjustments. We've brought you articles that explain the disadvantages of going with the current COLA system and the even greater disadvantages of switching to a chained COLA system that's not based on the income, the spending basket of the elderly. And the problem we've got is the elderly are facing far more inflationary costs because they spend so much more of their income on health care than others, that our current mix of COLA, what our COLA currently is based on is a mix of goods and services that's not representative of what elderly people are buying. And what we want to know is where the senator stands on Social Security COLA, and we haven't heard that, even though we've asked on several occasions. So that's one of the things we would like to know more. We urge her to support a switch to the elderly version of the price indices that are set up to measure the changes in cost of living. So that's one area that we've been asking about consistently.